In the summer of 2021, DeLay and Block visited the beautiful state of Montana to document trains on the BNSF railway through Big Sky country. Our goal was to record a local train on the Copper City subdivision between Garrison and Butte. But before we arrived, we found a military train in the southeast corner of the state near Lodgegrass. The southbound train was operating over the Bighorn subdivision, which is part of BNSF's Powder River division. This main line is rather remote, but remains a busy and important corridor for coal shipments to the eastern United States. We intercepted the train north of Wyola, where we set up our camera along a beautiful sweeping curve. This same train was seen in Missoula, Montana the day before on Montana Rail Link. We caught the train again near the Montana-Wyoming state line at Aberdeen. Seeing military trains like this one is quite uncommon. It is likely that BNSF was moving the equipment from one military base to another. This would be our last train on the Bighorn Sub as we continued north toward Butte. 2 days later, on August 2, 2021, we found BNSF Railway's Butte Turn Local at Garrison, Montana. The local freight operates over the Copper City subdivision, which is isolated from the rest of the BNSF system and connects with Montana Rail Link at Garrison. The local handles bridge traffic between the MRL and the Butte, Anaconda, and Pacific Railroad. The train crew went on duty earlier that morning in Butte, running as light power to Garrison, where we found them switching out cars in the afternoon. The train was powered by a trio of EMD SD70MACs, wearing the well-worn and faded Heritage 2 paint scheme. All units were built in the late 1990s and are capable of producing 4,000 horsepower. With 3 units, this train with 12,000 horses was well overpowered. EMD's signature teardrop cab is an obvious spotting feature of the SD70MAC. These units are far removed from their original intended use on heavy Powder River Basin coal trains. The Copper City subdivision of BNSF Railway was built between 1881 and 1883 as a narrow gauge line by the Utah and Northern Railroad, a subsidiary of J. Gould's Union Pacific Railway. Aware of Butte's rich copper deposits, Gould's company was the first railroad to lay track in Montana, running north from Ogden, Utah through Idaho, where it eventually connected with the Northern Pacific's Transcon at Garrison, a total of 453 miles. At Silverbow, just over 50 miles southeast of Garrison, the UNN was able to tap into the copper industry by interchanging with the mining railroads out of Butte. Waiting to access Butte's rich copper mines directly, Northern Pacific approached UP about forming a joint venture to operate the UNN line from Garrison to Silverbow. Union Pacific accepted the proposal, and in 1886 the Montana Union Railway was created to operate the line. Wanting to have an upper hand, Union Pacific retained ownership of the physical right-of-way. Northern Pacific wanted their own line into Butte but would struggle to find a suitable pass over the Continental Divide. In 1888, civil engineer Edwin Harrison McHenry discovered Homestake Pass over the divide, and construction began soon thereafter between Logan and Butte. The pass was completed 1 year later, giving NP direct access to America's Copper City without UP's control. As a side note, McHenry was the NP employee to suggest adopting the yin and yang symbol as the company's official logo several years later. Following the panic of 1893, both Union Pacific Railway and Northern Pacific Railway experienced financial turmoil that led to eventual bankruptcies. As a result, James Hill, known as the empire builder of the Great Northern Railroad, was able to control a majority interest in Northern Pacific by the turn of the century. UP's bankruptcy in 1897 prompted the company to restructure and consolidate, and as a result they sold their ownership in the Montana Union Railway to NP in 1898. Although the Montana Union became an NP subsidiary, UP continued to retain ownership of the physical right-of-way and leased the line to NP for 999 years. The lease is set to expire in March of 2897. Northern Pacific Railway would become one of 4 companies controlled by Hill by 1905, with the others being the Great Northern, the SP&S Railway, and the Burlington route. Hill's ultimate dream was to consolidate his railroads into one super railroad, but those plans were never realized during his lifetime. Leadership within the Hill roads attempted to merge another 2 times, once in 1927 and again in 1955, but both attempts were unsuccessful due to antitrust laws and legal battles. Finally, after a challenge that went all the way to the Supreme Court, the 4 railroads were allowed to merge on March 2, 1970, creating the nearly 24,000-mile-long Burlington Northern Railroad. From 1900 to 1970, the famed North Coast Limited Passenger Train, which operated between Chicago and Seattle, ran over Homestake Pass, through Butte, and on to Garrison, where it then took the NP Transcon to Washington State. In 1971, Amtrak relieved BN from its obligation to operate the train and continued the service as the North Coast Hiawatha for 8 years. Low ridership and major losses spelled the demise of the train in 1979. Coupled with a recession in the early 1980s and the closure of Butte's massive Berkeley mine in 1982, BN idled its line over Homestake Pass in 1983. In an effort to shred less profitable lines, Burlington Northern subleased the 52 miles of Union Pacific-owned track between Silver Bow and Garrison to the Montana Western Railway in 1986. 1 year later, in the fall of 1987, BN also leased over 900 miles of track to Montana Rail Link, a subsidiary of the Washington companies. For just shy of 17 years, Montana Western operated the former BN branch line until operations returned to BN's successor BNSF Railway after a series of lawsuits over rate hikes in July of 2003. This resulted in the Copper City subdivision becoming a completely isolated branch line under BNSF control. However, this may not be the case for long. On January 10, 2022, Montana Rail Link announced that it would terminate its lease with BNSF Railway, which means the giant Class 1 would reacquire its property. This means that the Copper City subdivision would no longer remain isolated from the rest of BNSF's network, and the presently abandoned Homestake Pass might have an opportunity to reopen if traffic estimates warrant an alternate route. Only time will tell if this comes to pass, pun intended. The old Yellowstone Trail now occupies the right-of-way of the ill-fated Milwaukee Road. By 1977, the very poorly managed company entered bankruptcy, and in 1979 decided to scrap its entire western extension west of Terry, Montana, which equated to some 1,100 miles of track. The public is now able to ride, walk, jog, or run on the newly completed Old Yellowstone Trail between Garrison and Deer Lodge. Deer Lodge is a historic town that still retains both its Northern Pacific and Milwaukee Road depots. The latter is now home to a church. The town of 3,000 was once the division headquarters of the Milwaukee Road, which along with the state prison employed much of the population. The original Montana State Prison is at the south end of Main Street and is now a museum. In addition to a former cell block building, the museum complex includes a theater, antique and automobile museums, and 2 Milwaukee Road locomotives, including a Little Joe Electric. The outdoor display commemorates the golden spikes of both the Northern Pacific Railway and Milwaukee Road, which completed their transcontinental routes near Garrison, Montana. Northern Pacific was the first railroad to reach the Pacific coast, holding its Golden Spike ceremony in 1883, just a few miles west of Garrison at Gold Creek. Milwaukee Road was the last to reach the Pacific Ocean in 1909. 2 significant sections of the Milwaukee Road were electrified, including this portion of the railroad through Deer Lodge. Little Joe E70 pulled the last electrified Milwaukee Road train on June 15, 1974. It was stored for several years before being donated to the city of Deer Lodge. Milwaukee Road E9A number 36 was donated to the city of Deer Lodge in 2010, where it has remained on display for the last 12 years. The city also owns a beautifully restored Milwaukee Road bay window caboose. After taking a look at the historic equipment displays, we returned to Milwaukee Avenue to record the Butte turn passing by the Milwaukee Road Depot. The loaded center beams at the front of the train are carrying forest products from Sun Mountain Lumber, which operates 2 manufacturing sites in Deer Lodge. The center beams will be delivered to Union Pacific at Silverbow. Sun Mountain Lumber ships over 90% of their milled goods out of state. Most of it goes to long-haul destinations like Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Texas. It is estimated that 90% of their out-of-state products are shipped by UP, 6% by BNSF, and 4% by truck. From South Frontage Road, we paced the Butte turn as it continued south while paralleling Interstate 90. Near Racetrack, Montana, we found this abandoned Morrisite church that dates back to 1879. The building has been abandoned for decades, but it is rumored to retain its original pews and a large chandelier. The Morrisites were a religious group that separated from the Mormon Church in 1862. They had some strange religious views, with one of its leaders proclaiming Deer Lodge as the site of the Second Coming and the nearby state prison as Ezekiel's temple. Warm Springs, Montana is home to the present-day State Correctional Facility for Women. Although the facility is surrounded by public roads, homes, and a post office, security guards are very unfriendly to railroad photographers. We highly recommend recording trains outside of Warm Springs, or else you will be asked to leave the area. West of Butte, we recorded the train from Miles Crossing, where the former Northern Pacific parallels both the abandoned Milwaukee Road and the Butte, Anaconda, and Pacific Railway into Silver Bow. Silverbow is where the BNSF Railway and the short line interchange with Union Pacific's Montana subdivision. The Port of Montana is strategically located here at the intersection of Interstates 90 and 15. The port is a full-service transload, distribution, warehouse, and storage facility. At the south end of the Y, BNSF exchanges cars with Union Pacific. BNSF and UP interchange Monday through Friday at Silverbow, and crews from both railroads are often working the port at the same time. With cars now in tow for Butte, the BNSF local was ready to head for downtown where it serves Montana Resources, the present-day operator of the Continental East Pit. Although a far cry from what it used to be, the mining company employs 350 people and produces 50,000 tons of copper ore per day. By this time of day, the weather conditions were declining rapidly as a thunderstorm was approaching from the south. We opted to hit the road and started heading west for Missoula. On the way, we would parallel the former Northern Pacific Main Line, now operated by MRL. At Ravenna, we encountered the westbound Laurel to Missoula Manifest train powered by two EMD SD70MACs. The train consisted of 14 loads and 12 empties, stretching 1,831 feet and weighing in at 2,274 tons. After catching the high-speed manifest, we found the Bonner Local east of Missoula near Milltown. This train serves the Willis Enterprises wood chip plant at Bonner and uses a caboose to make long shove moves back to Missoula. We were thrilled to document an all-matching consist of MRL equipments. The caboose was the icing on the cake. The chip plant opened in 2011 and processes dead or weakened trees into wood chips that are used for paper products like tissue paper, toilet paper, cups, and more. The Boise Paper Mill in Central Washington is a primary customer of the chip plant. Through a partnership with Montana Rail Link, about 15 cars of lumber are loaded at the plant throughout the week. At Missoula, we set up our camera along a beautiful sweeping curve across the road from Missoula College. Here, University Mountain dwarfs the skyline east of downtown. We caught up with the train in downtown Missoula, where the cars will be dropped off at Montana Rail Link's yard. The railroad's main classification yard is in Laurel, with a roundhouse and mechanical facilities in Livingston, and with smaller yards located in Missoula, Billings, Bozeman, and Helena. This footage was recorded in August of 2021. Little did we know that 5 months later, Montana Rail Link would announce that it was seeking the early termination of its operating lease with BNSF Railway. Soon, the beautiful blue, white, and red locomotives of this fascinating regional will disappear as another chapter in Montana's railroad history comes to a close. Let this video serve as a reminder to always document railroads today, because they might not be here tomorrow. Since our focus was on the Pacific Northwest, we decided that we would record Montana Rail Link trains in the future and left Missoula for Washington State. It is unlikely that we'll be able to return before MRL goes out of business, so we will always look at this footage with fondness. We hope you enjoyed our coverage from the land of the Big Sky, and thank you for watching. Until next time, happy railroading.